Hello, my name's Anna Jordan, and I am a playwright and a screenwriter. And over the last couple of years on Twitter, I've been doing something called that I've been calling Writers' Survival Tips, which was born out of a time I was having a really difficult time in my personal life, but as so often happens, work didn't let up at all. And so I started to become reliant on these tips and tricks and games and little things that I was doing as part of my practice that I found made a really big difference. And so I started to share them on Twitter with the hope that they might be able to help or be of use to other writers. So if you want to look on Twitter, the hashtag is Writers Survival Tips. But for a while I've been wanting to make videos of them just so I can expand a little bit. I really want to build up the content on the Without a Paddle YouTube channel. So here we are. So let's start with the first writer's survival tip. I did write it down, but it's backwards, so it doesn't really work. This is about as high-tech as I get. So my first writer's survival tip one is leave the game open. And what do I mean by that? So at the end of a writing session, whether that's you've done your whole day at your desk, you've done half an hour on your lunch, you've grabbed 15 minutes to write in the morning before your kids wake up, whatever that is, whatever your writing session is, when you finish it, can you leave your work in a state both physically and mentally, I guess, where you can pick up again easily? And a way of doing this is to decide what it is you're going to start working on in your next session. Maybe you're going to set yourself a little timed writing exercise, automatic writing exercise, a stream of consciousness on one of your character's thoughts, or maybe there's a specific scene that you know you want to work on. You're leaving that blank document open, you put the title on, you're ready to start with that the next time you sit down. And why might that be a good idea? Well, I guess that I'm aware that sitting down to write is quite hard. Maybe not for everyone, but for me, certainly. I write for a career now, but for a very long time I didn't do that. And so I was finding time around working full-time in an admin job, late at night, early in the morning, and lots of people are doing the same thing still. So making the absolute most of that time and making it as easy as possible to sit down at your desk and start working, I think is really key and can be something that can be achieved quite easily and can make a big difference. And this really sort of digs into something that I talk about a lot with writers and with artists in general, and that is about pride and shame. And what I mean by that, or what I'm sort of trying to touch on, is this idea that I think it's impossible for us to sit down or stand up and think, I'm going to make good art. The only art that we can make, the writing we can do, the pictures we can paint, the songs we can write, whatever, we can only attempt to be truthful. And what do I mean by that? I don't mean being truthful does not mean I will only write from the experience of my life, but being truthful is being honest and putting onto the page or onto the canvas or whatever it is. Is that still here? Yeah. How you see the world and how you feel about the world and the things in it and how you feel about yourself. And this is even when not necessarily when you're writing. It doesn't have to be that you're writing autobiographically. This is just every word that you write is infused with who you are. And the most truthful writing, I think, is when we can embrace the way we see the world and how we want to share that with other people. And in order to do that, I think there's a lot of shame involved with writing. Because to be truthful, we have to expose parts of ourselves that might be difficult or painful or deeply embarrassing, which is something that I often feel, or silly, which is something that I often feel. Probably silly comes above deeply embarrassed for me. Silly is something that I live with day in, day out. But so I kind of feel like if you're being tested, if you're if these feelings of shame do come up sometimes, I kind of feel like you're doing it right, because you're tapping into an honesty. So what do we do? We live with a lot of shame in our lives anyway, right? Society and media and the ideals that are held up give us a lot of shame to drive capitalism, to change our bodies, to change our lives, to be better, to be richer, to be thinner. But so what can we do to counteract this, the effects of shame in our work? That shame must be present in order for work to be truthful to a certain degree. And I think the opposite of shame is pride, and a positive type of pride is about taking pride in the little things that we can. So that is having a tidy workspace, if that works for you. I mean, that really works for me. That makes a huge difference for me. Acknowledging that you have spent a session at the computer or wherever it is that you write, and you have carved time out of your schedule, or you have committed that time, that you've finished off that session, and as part of the end of that session, you've prepared for the next. You know the next is coming. And then when you sit down, you can start work and feel proud that you took the time to set up your space, to set yourself up a little exercise, to leave a couple of index cards with some instructions, or maybe an encouraging note to say, you're doing really well, doing really well. And the accumulative power of this can be really great, I think. So yeah, leave the game open. Make it easy for you to come back to your work, whether that is at the laptop or wherever it is, at your notebook. And find pride wherever you can. If that's what your workspace looks like, it might be how you're... Something that I love to do, that I don't do as much as I should, but I love to do, is displaying my research materials in like a really interesting and pleasing way, like a vision board or an image board, or really using Pinterest to its, building playlists, all that stuff. How can you find pride in your work when so often we feel vulnerable and maybe a little bit ashamed when we are being truthful in our work? So yeah, that's writer's tip. Bit sunny here. Writer's survival tip number 1: leave the game open. Thanks.